They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But mine was ice cold by the time I was done with it. Before the chill set in, there was only warmth. At 35, my arms ached with an emptiness that no amount of professional success or the unwavering love from my husband Hudson could fill. For years, the journey to motherhood had been a cruel dance between soaring hope and crushing despair. Twice, the vibrant promise of life had flickered and died within me, leaving behind a hollow ache that echoed through my very bones. Each miscarriage was a fragment of my soul torn away, a silent testament to dreams unfulfilled. The hospital corridors, once symbols of healing, had become pathways to grief. Yet, with each loss, Hudson was there, a steady anchor, his hand firm in mine, his whispered reassurances the only balm for my shattered spirit. He cried with me, held me, and never let me give up hope. Today, though, felt different. A gentle hum of anticipation filled the air in the sterile yet hopeful ultrasound room. Dr. Carter, with his kind eyes and reassuring smile, moved the transducer over my swollen belly. My gaze was fixed on the monitor, a silent prayer forming on my lips. And then, there he was, a tiny perfect silhouette on the screen, a strong, rhythmic beat echoing through the room. "A healthy baby boy, Gladys," Dr. Carter announced, his voice calm, yet carrying the weight of profound joy. "Everything looks perfect." The word boy hit me like a wave of pure, unadulterated euphoria, washing away years of pain and doubt. Noah. My Noah. I felt an overwhelming surge of protectiveness. A love so fierce it took my breath away. In that moment, the future unfolded before me. A tapestry woven with vibrant hues of laughter, sticky fingers, and bedtime stories. I envisioned Hudson, a devoted father, teaching our son to ride a bike, his proud smile mirroring my own. We would be a family, complete, invincible. The happiness was so profound, so absolute, it felt almost sacred. My fingers trembled as I dialed Hudson's number, barely able to contain the tremor in my voice. "It's a boy, Hudson. A healthy baby boy." His joyful shout on the other end, his excited questions about his son, his promises to rush home. It all cemented my belief in our shared happiness, in the perfect life we were building. He truly sounded like the loving husband and expectant father I knew him to be. I couldn't wait to tell Florence too. My best friend, my confidant, she'd walked through every painful step of those previous heartbreaks with me, offering a shoulder to cry on and an ear to listen. Florence, who always knew how to make me laugh, who understood the silent language of my grief, was surely celebrating this news with me in spirit. Our little Noah was loved even before he arrived, surrounded by a circle of care and unwavering affection. The melody of my son's heartbeat still echoed in my ears, a private symphony of pure joy. I floated down the quiet hospital corridor, each step light, my hand instinctively caressing the gentle swell of my belly. The fluorescent lights seemed softer, the sterile air infused with a newfound sweetness. I was still replaying Dr. Carter's words, picturing Noah, envisioning our future. I barely noticed the hushed voices at first. Just a low murmur from a secluded alcove near the exit, where a small seating area was tucked away for privacy. My mind, still swimming in the afterglow of my miracle, registered them as a distant hum. But then, a familiar timbre cut through my blissful haze. Hudson's voice, and Florence's. A smile tugged at my lips. How sweet! They must be planning some elaborate surprise party for me. Perhaps even for Noah. Florence always the thoughtful one. And Hudson, always eager to celebrate our milestones. I paused, tucked discreetly behind a large potted plant, a playful idea forming to eavesdrop and pretend to be surprised later. "Can't keep up this charade much longer, Florence." Hudson's voice, low and strained, drifted to me. My playful smile faltered slightly. Charade? Was he talking about a surprise? That seemed an odd word choice. Florence's reply was softer, laced with an unsettling urgency. "I know, darling, but we have to be careful. Gladys, she's pregnant. It makes things complicated. My breath hitched. Complicated? With my pregnancy? A cold knot began to form in my stomach. This wasn't sounding like a party. Complicated is an understatement. Hudson scoffed, a harsh edge I'd never heard before in his voice. She's so emotional, Florence. And this baby? It's just another anchor. I told you, I want out. I'm going to divorce her as soon as I can, without losing everything. And the child? That's her time's problem. Not mine. The world tilted. The bright hospital corridor spun into a dizzying blur. Asterisk. Divorce? Abandoning their child? Not mine? Asterisk. My mind screamed in protest. No, this couldn't be right. My Hudson, the man who'd wept with me through 2 miscarriages, who'd promised a future filled with children. It was a cruel trick of sound, a horrible misunderstanding. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering against my ribs, each beat a painful thud against the sudden crushing silence in my soul. I needed to hear more. I had times to be wrong. Don't talk like that, Hudson, Florence whispered, a faint tremor in her voice. It's harsh. Besides, what about our time's future? What about our time's baby? Asterisk, our baby? Asterisk. The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. A sharp, searing pain tore through me, far worse than any physical wound. My best friend. My husband. Don't worry, my love, Hudson soothed, his voice sickeningly tender now. I'll handle Gladys. And our baby will have everything. We just need to execute the plan perfectly. Her pregnancy is just a temporary setback. A slight inconvenience we'll navigate around. Once she's out of the picture, we can finally be together, openly, with our son. He called Florence's baby time's son asterisk. A phantom hand squeezed my throat, preventing any sound from escaping. The joyful glow that had enveloped me moments ago shattered into a million icy fragments. My world, built on love and trust, disintegrated before my very eyes. Florence, my confidant, my shoulder to cry on. Hudson, my rock, my husband, the father of my child. They were conspiring against me, against our time's Noah, planning to cast us aside for their own twisted future. A profound, visceral sense of betrayal washed over me. So potent, it threatened to buckle my knees. It wasn't just a simple affair. It was a calculated, insidious plot to destroy my life, to strip away everything I held dear, including the unborn child I cherished. They were talking about my time's Noah as an inconvenience. Tears welled, hot and stinging, but they didn't fall. A strange, terrifying numbness began to spread through my limbs, replacing the initial shock with a chilling emptiness. I retreated silently, my steps muffled by the plush carpet, moving like a ghost. My hand, still protectively covering my belly, now felt heavy, cold. The immense weight of their revelation crushed my spirit, squeezing out every last drop of joy, hope, and trust. In its place, a desolate void began to form, a hollow space waiting to be filled by something far darker than grief. The desolate void that had begun to form within me solidified into a terrifying numbness, a stillness so profound it stifled even the tremor of my shattered heart. I walked, breathed, even smiled, but it was as if a crucial part of my being had been amputated, leaving behind a phantom limb of pain that throbbed beneath an icy layer of calm. This wasn't grief. Grief was messy, loud, demanding. This was something far colder, far more dangerous. It was the quiet, methodical ticking of a clock that had just reset to 0. But within that chilling calm, something sharp and crystalline began to coalesce. It wasn't sorrow for what I had lost, nor was it despair for what lay ahead. It was a singular, unyielding purpose, born from the deepest, most primal corner of my soul. My hand instinctively went to my belly, to the life blossoming within me. My Noah. They saw him as an inconvenience, a problem to be navigated. But for me, he was everything. His future, his safety, his very existence, became the unshakable foundation of my new resolve. He would not be abandoned. He would not be dismissed. And he certainly would not be someone else's problem. To scream, to cry, to confront them then and there would have been cathartic perhaps. It would have offered the fleeting satisfaction of seeing their masks shatter. But it would also have been foolish. They were calculating. They were prepared. They had a plan. And I was a pregnant woman, reeling from a betrayal that would cripple lesser spirits. Emotion would only play into their hands, giving them the upper hand, allowing them to twist the narrative, to paint me as the hysterical wife. No, what I needed was not a theatrical scene, but an airtight case. I needed proof. Irrefutable, undeniable proof that would expose their treachery, not just to their faces, but to the world, and more importantly, to a court of law. The Gladys who had cherished her husband, who had trusted her best friend, who had believed in an uncomplicated world, that woman died in the sterile corridor of the hospital that day. In her place, a new self emerged, forged in the fires of deceit, hardened by maternal instinct. She was methodical, she was patient, and she was utterly merciless. Every flicker of doubt, every pang of sadness, was suppressed, buried deep beneath a resolve as solid as granite. My child would not know the bitterness of being unwanted. I would be his shield, his sword, his unwavering protector. Returning home felt like stepping onto a meticulously crafted stage. Hudson, with his practiced tenderness, asked about the ultrasound, his lips forming the right words, but his eyes failing to meet mine with the same warmth I had once known. Florence, ever the solicitous friend, called later, her voice saccharine as she inquired about my good news, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in her usually steady tone. They thought they were invisible, their charade flawless. They were wrong. Every gesture, every word, every subtle shift in their demeanor was now a clue, logged and analyzed by the cold, new mind that inhabited my body. I watched them, no longer with love or trust, but with the keen, predatory focus of a hunter preparing her trap. Their habits, once unremarkable, now held hidden meanings. Their glances, once innocent, were now laced with furtive secrecy. They believed they were masters of deception. I would soon prove them tragically mistaken. My analysis of their deceit was complete. Now, the execution began. My first moves were made in the quiet hours, under the cloak of night, when Hudson's heavy breathing beside me was the only sound in our shared bedroom. While he slept, oblivious, I moved with a stealth I never knew I possessed. A tiny, almost imperceptible microphone, no bigger than a button, found its home beneath the sofa cushion in the living room, another tucked behind a book on his office shelf, disguised amongst his clutter. I had researched these devices online, learning their discreet placement, their range, their battery life. Each click of the tiny recording mechanism felt like a drumbeat of war in the silence. Accessing his phone was a delicate dance between technological savvy and sheer will. I knew his password, a relic from a time when trust was absolute. The screen glowed, illuminating the digital landscape of his betrayal. My fingers, steady despite the tremors in my soul, navigated through call logs and message threads. I found them quickly: late-night calls to an unsaved number, suspiciously frequent messages exchanged with Florence, often deleted, but some remaining, hinting at stolen moments and shared secrets. I meticulously took screenshots, transferred data to a secure cloud drive I had just created. A virtual vault for my growing arsenal. During the day, I maintained the facade. The loving wife, the expectant mother, blissfully unaware. My smiles were genuine enough to fool them. My conversations about mundane things, grocery lists, dinner plans, baby names, were carefully chosen distractions. I would ask Hudson about his busy day, feigning concern, knowing exactly where he'd been, who he'd been with. Thanks to the data I was silently compiling, Florence, too, received my usual warmth, a sickening charade that made my stomach churn, but a necessary one to lull them into complacency. They believed their secret was safe, their deception flawless. This belief was their greatest vulnerability. Slowly, subtly, I began to plant seeds of doubt within Hudson's family. His mother, Eleanor, was the first target. "Hudson seems so stressed lately, doesn't he, Eleanor?" I'd sigh during our weekly call, my voice laced with gentle concern. "Always on his phone, always distant. I worry about him. He's working so late, he barely has time for us anymore." Eleanor, ever protective of her son, would cluck sympathetically, perhaps dismissing it as work pressure, but the words would linger. Next was Owen, Hudson's older brother, a pragmatic man who noticed details. "Hudson's been working late a lot, Gladys?" he'd ask during a family dinner. "Oh yes," I'd reply, a touch of manufactured sadness in my voice. "He's under so much pressure, dear, so many meetings. He says it's crucial for his career, but I barely see him. He's always so preoccupied." Owen's brow would furrow, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Angela, Hudson's sister, was the easiest, prone to gossip and always keen for a juicy morsel. "Have you noticed anything odd about Hudson, Ange?" I'd casually inquire over coffee, as if sharing a trivial observation. "He's just different, distracted, and he's been so particular about his phone lately, almost secretive. I tried to borrow it the other day, and he practically snatched it back. So unlike him, isn't it?" Angela's eyes would widen, already connecting dots I hadn't explicitly drawn. I didn't accuse. I merely pointed out observations, framing them as a worried wife's concerns, letting their own minds, already privy to the nuances of Hudson's character, fill in the blanks. The first tangible results of my quiet investigation arrived soon after. Listening back to the recordings, their voices were clear, chillingly casual as they discussed the Gladys problem and Florence's belly, their code for my pregnancy and hers. I heard Hudson's impatience, Florence's calculated reassurances, their twisted plans to liquidate assets, to leave me with nothing. The text exchanges were even more damning. Intimate pet names, plans for secret rendezvous, bitter complaints about me, and even mocking remarks about my naivety. There were mentions of shared financial accounts, small, insidious transfers, a subtle siphoning of our joint funds. Each piece of evidence was a fresh stab, but also a hardening of my resolve. The pain was real, but it was being channeled, sharpened into a weapon. They had dug their own graves, and I was merely collecting the shovels. The evidence I had painstakingly gathered myself was merely the tip of the iceberg, a brutal appetizer to the feast of betrayal I knew lay beneath. To truly unearth the depths of their deceit, to dismantle Hudson's carefully constructed world of lies and exploitation, I needed more than clandestine recordings and phone screenshots. I needed professional help, an extension of my cold, calculating will. Through hours of late-night research, shrouded in the dim glow of my laptop, I found him. A discreet private investigator, highly recommended for his meticulous work and impenetrable confidentiality. Our first meeting was a study in contrasts. I, outwardly the picture of a grieving, slightly bewildered wife, but inside a steel trap of focus. He, a quiet man named Mr. Davies with weary eyes that had seen too much, yet held an unwavering professional intensity. I presented my initial findings, the recorded snippets, the damning texts, the subtle shifts in Hudson's and Florence's behavior. I omitted the raw pain, the primal betrayal, distilling my story into a concise, factual account of suspected infidelity and financial impropriety. Mr. Davies listened, nodding occasionally, his pen scratching notes on a pad. His assessment was blunt. "This isn't just an affair, Mrs. Smith. This is a coordinated attack. You need to prepare for war." And so, the war began in earnest, fought on two fronts, financial and personal. Mr. Davies' work was swift and brutal. Within weeks, The truth about Hudson's financial world unraveled, thread by thread, revealing a tapestry of deceit, far more intricate than I had imagined. He wasn't just unfaithful. He was a predator, systematically draining our joint accounts, shifting assets, and setting up shell corporations. Receipts for lavish gifts, not for me but for Florence, emerged from secret compartments in his office desk. Disguised as business expenses, bank statements detailed suspiciously large, regular transfers to an offshore account I had never known existed. He had even taken out a substantial second mortgage on our home, forging my signature, the funds disappearing into a complex web of investments, all carefully structured to exclude me. His plan wasn't just to divorce me, it was to leave me destitute, to ensure that I, and by extension, Noah, would be stripped of every comfort, every security. The discovery ignited a fresh wave of cold fury. This wasn't merely about love lost, it was about survival. Mr. Davies also delivered a chillingly detailed account of Hudson and Florence's movements. Photographs, time-stamped and geotagged, showed them entering a secluded apartment building across town. Florence's new, expensive rental, financed by Hudson, restaurant receipts from intimate dinners at Romano's. The very place I had once dreamed of celebrating our future as a family. Hotel bookings for weekend getaways, far from prying eyes, complete with minibar tabs and spa services. Each piece of paper, each digital file, was a fresh wound, but I forced myself to look, to absorb the full extent of their calculated cruelty. I lived in a constant state of hyper-awareness, my mind a churning database of betrayal, yet I maintained the facade of blissful ignorance, smiling through dinners, discussing baby names with the man who was plotting my ruin. The emotional toll was immense. A silent scream trapped behind my serene expression, but the image of Noah, tiny and vulnerable, was my impenetrable armor. With my arsenal of evidence growing exponentially, it was time to consult legal counsel. Janet Morrison, a formidable divorce attorney renowned for her tenacity and strategic brilliance, came highly recommended. Her office, elegant yet understated, felt like a sanctuary of legal might. I laid out my case, carefully, methodically, holding back some of the more explosive evidence for strategic deployment, but giving her enough to understand the gravity of the situation. I described Hudson's infidelity, Florence's complicity, and the emerging financial fraud. I presented the initial recordings, the screenshots, the preliminary financial discrepancies Mr. Davies had uncovered. Janet listened intently, her sharp blue eyes missing nothing. She reviewed the documents, occasionally raising an eyebrow, a flicker of professional admiration in her gaze. "Mrs. Smith," she finally said, her voice calm but firm, "what you have here is not just a strong case for divorce. This is a blueprint for destroying a man's career and reputation, and ensuring your son's future is secured. We will not just win, we will dominate." Her words, delivered without a hint of sentimentality, were music to my ears. She advised me on the immediate steps: securing marital assets, freezing certain accounts, and preparing for an injunction. She warned me that the battle would be ugly, but assured me that with the evidence I possessed, victory was not just probable, but inevitable. As I left her office, a grim satisfaction settled over me. The pain was still a constant companion, but it was now overshadowed by a cold, unwavering resolve. They had wanted to leave me with nothing. I would make sure they were the ones who lost everything. The blueprints for destruction were now in the capable hands of Janet Morrison. My part, however, was far from over. The legal battle would be fought in court. The psychological war, however, began immediately. Within the very walls of our home, it was a quieter, more insidious campaign, designed to unravel their composure, thread by thread, until their carefully constructed lies imploded from within. My first move was elegantly simple. A silk scarf, a vibrant emerald green that matched Florence's eyes, lay innocently on the passenger seat of Hudson's car. I had found it draped over a coat in the back of our closet. A coat Florence had supposedly helped him sort through weeks ago, during one of her friendly visits. With a delicate touch, I smoothed it out, ensuring it was visible. Later I texted Hudson, asterisk, "Darling, I refilled your gas tank for you while you were at work. Figured you'd appreciate it. Hope your day was good." Asterisk, a small thoughtful gesture, a subtle, venomous seed. When he arrived home, he seemed agitated. He kissed me distractedly, his eyes darting around the room, then lingered on the scarf in his hand as he came inside. "Where did this come from?" he asked, his voice strained, holding up the emerald silk. I feigned a look of surprise. "Oh, that? Florence must have left it when she was helping me clean out the garage last week. I meant to give it back to her." "Just put it aside, dear." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing, just tossed the scarf onto the hall table, a muscle twitching in his cheek. He made no move to return it to Florence. The seed was planted. I continued my carefully crafted conversations with Hudson's mother, Eleanor, adding new layers of concern to the foundation I'd already laid. "He's so withdrawn lately, Eleanor," I'd sigh during our calls, making sure my voice held a tremor of genuine worry. "And those late nights. I sometimes wonder if he's hiding something from me. Not that I think anything bad, of course. Just secrets. It makes me feel terribly lonely, darling." Eleanor's maternal instincts, usually fiercely protective of Hudson, now warred with a creeping sense of unease. Her voice grew softer, her questions about Hudson's schedule more probing when she spoke to him. She didn't accuse, but she began to observe, to question. Owen and Angela, too, were drawn deeper into my web. Over a quiet lunch, I mentioned, with a slight frown, "Hudson has been so jumpy lately. And he mentioned his phone was playing up. So he's started carrying a second one for work calls. Isn't that odd? He always hated having two phones." Owen's brow furrowed, his pragmatic mind noting the illogicality. Angela's eyes, as expected, glittered with speculative interest. I was feeding them crumbs, allowing them to bake their own cake of suspicion. I watched them, a silent observer in my own life. The shifting glances between Hudson and Florence became more frequent, more frantic. Their hurried whispers ceased abruptly, replaced by forced smiles. Whenever I entered a room, Florence's once effervescent laugh now held a brittle edge, her eyes darting nervously between Hudson and me, as if searching for a tell. Hudson, for his part, became increasingly agitated. He snapped at minor inconveniences, his facade of the loving husband starting to crack under the invisible pressure I was exerting. He'd check his phone constantly, then suddenly shove it into his pocket, his face pale. Their growing paranoia made them careless, their once meticulous deception beginning to fray at the edges. One evening, a heated argument drifted from Hudson's study. They thought the door was closed, the walls thick. But my tiny microphones, silent sentinels, captured every frantic word. "She knows, Hudson. I'm telling you. She knows times something asterisk." Florence's voice, usually so composed, was shrill, laced with panic. "She left my scarf in your car, the one from our trip." "Don't be ridiculous, Florence. It was just an accident," Hudson retorted, though his voice lacked conviction. "She's just a worried pregnant woman, always imagining things." "Is she, or is she playing us?" "She keeps talking to your mother about your secrets. And Owen asked me if you were seeing someone else the other day." "He did?" Hudson sounded genuinely alarmed now. "She's just trying to cause trouble. Don't let her get to you." But Florence wasn't listening. "And you left this Times on your desk." There was a clatter. "A receipt for the Romanos restaurant from last Tuesday. You told me you were working late." "Shh, keep your voice down." Their frantic conversation continued, a symphony of accusations and denials, each word a testament to their unraveling. After Florence stormed out, slamming the front door, and Hudson retreated to the solitude of his study, I crept in. On his desk, nestled amidst a pile of files, lay a crumpled receipt from Romanos. But it wasn't just any receipt. It was for a particularly expensive bottle of champagne and 2 elaborate dessert soufflé, items Hudson knew I didn't care for, and beside it, a small, intricately carved wooden elephant, no bigger than my thumb, its trunk raised in a posture of defiance. I remembered seeing a similar one in Florence's apartment, prominently displayed on her bookshelf during one of my unsuspecting visits. Hudson had told me his business trip to Thailand had been grueling. This elephant, a souvenir, was a tangible piece of their shared deception, a physical embodiment of the lie he had fed me. I pocketed both items. The trap was tightening. They were not only revealing their guilt but also providing me with the perfect pieces to spring it. That crumpled receipt from Romanos, combined with the tiny elephant, sparked a new, chillingly elegant idea. It wasn't enough to gather evidence. I needed to orchestrate their downfall, to peel back their masks in a public, undeniable spectacle. And what better stage than the very restaurant where they had celebrated their illicit love? The very place I had once envisioned celebrating my future. The trap was set. Now, I just needed to lure them into it. The invitations were crafted with meticulous care, each word dripping with the saccharine sweetness of my carefully constructed facade. A celebratory dinner, I announced to Hudson's family, my voice light and joyful during our respective phone calls, to share some wonderful news about Noah, and simply to enjoy each other's company. Eleanor, always eager for family gatherings, readily accepted, her voice brimming with delight. Owen, ever the reserved one, expressed his pleasure, as did Angela, whose curiosity I knew was already piqued by my subtle hints. The real challenge was inviting Florence. I dialed her number, my heart a block of ice in my chest, a practiced smile on my lips. Florence, darling, I'm planning a small, intimate dinner for Hudson's family next week at Romanos. A little celebration, you know? And of course, you simply must come. You're practically family, and I couldn't imagine it without you. There was a beat of silence on the other end, a flicker of hesitation before her voice, tight but outwardly cheerful, replied, "Oh Gladys, how lovely. Yes, I'd love to. Romanos, you say?" I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind, the flicker of unease warring with the necessity of maintaining appearances. She suspected something, I knew. But she couldn't afford to refuse. To decline would be to admit guilt, to disrupt the carefully woven lie that she was merely my devoted friend. Hudson, when I informed him, was less enthusiastic. "Romanos? Why there, Gladys? It's so expensive." I simply shrugged. "It's a special occasion, darling. Our son." "And you love their steak," he grumbled. But ultimately, he too was caught in the current of my planning. I booked the most private, yet subtly exposed dining room at Romanos. It was an alcove designed for intimate celebrations, adorned with soft lighting and plush velvet chairs, yet strategically positioned so the entrance afforded a clear view of the arriving guests. This wouldn't be a quiet affair, it would be a public unveiling, observed by everyone who mattered. The surprise announcement was, ostensibly, a gender reveal, or perhaps a formal name announcement. The truth, of course, was far more devastating. I also made arrangements for a discreet photographer, a young woman I found through Mr. Davies, to blend in as part of the restaurant staff. Her instructions were clear. Capture expressions, reactions, and every shift in posture, especially from Hudson and Florence. Every flicker of panic, every contortion of guilt, would be immortalized. In the days leading up to the dinner, I moved through life like a ghost, an automaton driven by a single, unyielding purpose. The cold anticipation was a constant hum beneath my skin, a stark counterpoint to the profound sadness that occasionally threatened to break through. This was not a moment of gleeful vengeance, not entirely. It was a funeral for the life I had believed in, for the husband I had loved, for the friend I had cherished. But it was also a birth, the birth of my son's secure future, forged from the ashes of my shattered trust. I looked at my reflection, a woman hardened, eyes devoid of the naive softness they once held. I chose an elegant, deep sapphire blue dress, a color of calm and authority, but also one that echoed the depth of the ocean, hiding untold secrets beneath its surface. It was a shield, a declaration. The evening of the dinner arrived, cloaked in a deceptive autumnal chill. Romano's, with its warm, inviting glow, seemed to hum with an almost ironic charm. I arrived early, surveyed the table, ensuring every detail was perfect: the floral centerpiece, the crystal glasses, the crisp white linen, each element a silent mockery of the betrayal it was about to witness. I took my seat, my spine straight, a serene, almost detached smile on my face. First came Eleanor, beaming, a floral corsage pinned to her dress, her eyes full of warmth. "My dear, you look radiant," she exclaimed, embracing me. "So excited for your wonderful news." Then Owen, stoic but kind, and Angela, already looking around, assessing the room, her gaze lingering a little too long on the entrance. They all seemed genuinely happy, oblivious to the storm brewing. And then, Hudson and Florence. They arrived together, a picture of strained normalcy. Hudson, in his expensive suit, offered a perfunctory kiss to my cheek, his eyes darting quickly to Florence. Florence, impeccably dressed in a vibrant emerald green gown, offered a bright, almost frantic smile, her eyes darting between me and the other family members. She looked beautiful, poised, but I saw the subtle tremor in her hand as she accepted a glass of water, the faint shadow of unease behind her forced cheerfulness. They sat opposite me, their hands brushing under the table for a fleeting second, a gesture that once would have gone unnoticed but now screamed their guilt. The air in the private dining room, thick with polite chatter and the clinking of silverware, felt charged. They were all here, gathered around my table, unaware that they were merely pawns in a meticulously calculated game. They ate, they drank, they laughed hollowly, completely blind to the fact that their perfect little world was about to come crashing down. I watched them, my expression unreadable, a silent conductor poised to unleash a symphony of destruction. The storm was here. I raised my glass, the crystal chiming softly as I caught the attention of everyone at the table. A serene, almost beatific smile played on my lips, a mask of unblemished happiness. Hudson, next to me, gave a relieved, albeit stiff, smile, clearly thinking I was about to announce something benign. Florence, across the table, forced a wide grin, her eyes darting nervously. "To family," I began, my voice clear and melodious. "The very cornerstone of our existence. To the bonds of loyalty that hold us together, through thick and thin, and to the unwavering trust that allows us to build a future, knowing we are surrounded by love and honesty." My gaze swept across Eleanor, whose eyes shone with maternal pride, then to Owen and Angela, who nodded in agreement. Finally, it rested on Hudson, then Florence. A subtle shift in my expression that only they, perhaps, could detect as a chill. "May we always cherish those who stand by us, who protect our hearts and our children's futures, with unwavering devotion." I took a sip of water, allowing my words, like carefully placed dominoes, to settle. A young woman, ostensibly part of the restaurant staff, moved discreetly around the table, snapping what she likely thought were joyous family moments. I watched her, then reached for an elegant leather portfolio I had placed beside my chair. "Speaking of cherished memories," I continued, pulling out a thick envelope, "I was just tidying up some old photo albums today. So many wonderful memories, and I found some particularly interesting ones I thought we could all share." My tone was light, conversational, even as Hudson's face stiffened and Florence's forced smile faltered. From the envelope, I first produced a selection of perfectly innocent pictures. Hudson and me on our wedding day, a baby shower for a mutual friend, an old photo of Eleanor and a younger Owen. The family cooed politely. Then, without missing a beat, I slid a stack of glossy 8x10 prints across the table. These weren't old memories, these were high-resolution images. Hudson and Florence, hand in hand, laughing intimately as they exited a secluded apartment building. Hudson kissing Florence outside the Romano's restaurant itself, just last month. Florence, her hand gently caressing her own subtly rounded belly, while Hudson's arm was protectively draped around her. A gasp escaped Eleanor's lips. Owen's jaw dropped, and Angela's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horrified understanding. Hudson and Florence, initially frozen in disbelief, began to stir. Hudson's face drained of all color, while Florence's turned a sickly green. What is this, Gladys?" Hudson stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper, reaching for the photos as if to snatch them away. "Evidence, darling," I replied calmly, pulling the pictures just out of his reach. "Just a few snapshots from your secret life. Don't worry, there's plenty more." I then produced a neatly bound folder, opening it to reveal printed text messages. "Here, let's read some of your heartfelt exchanges. Can't wait to be a real family with you and times our times, little man." Hudson to Florence, and Florence replying, "Soon, my love. Once Gladys and times her times inconvenience are out of the way." "Oh, and this one. Have you frozen the accounts yet? We need to make sure she gets nothing." The atmosphere in the private dining room had shifted from polite shock to outright hostility. Eleanor was openly weeping, pressing a napkin to her mouth. Owen's face was a mask of furious disbelief, his eyes fixed on his brother. Angela let out a strangled cry of disgust. "This is a lie, a setup," Florence shrieked, finally finding her voice. A desperate, pathetic attempt at denial. "Gladys, you're delusional. You're clearly unstable from your pregnancy." "Am I?" I lifted a small, discreet audio recorder from my lap, pressing a button. A familiar, hushed conversation filled the stunned silence, amplified just enough for everyone to hear. It was Hudson's voice, clear as a bell. "Going to divorce her as soon as I can, without losing everything. And the child? That's times her times problem, not mine." Then Florence's, "What about times our times future? What about times our times baby?" And Hudson's sickeningly tender reply, "I'll handle Gladys. And times our times baby? Our baby will have everything. We just need to execute the plan perfectly. Her pregnancy is just a temporary setback, a slight inconvenience we'll navigate around. Once she's out of the picture, we can finally be together. Openly. With our son." The recording clicked off. The silence that followed was deafening, suffocating. Hudson looked like a cornered animal, his eyes wide with terror, sweat beading on his forehead. Florence was slumped in her chair, her face utterly ashen, her emerald dress now a grotesque mockery of her betrayed friendship. "Our son?" Eleanor sobbed, looking from Hudson to Florence, then to my still flat belly, a fresh wave of tears streaming down her face. You mean?" I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a cool, unwavering tone that cut through the lingering echoes of their deception. "Yes, Eleanor. My husband, Hudson Smith, and my best friend, Florence Miller, are having a child together." While I was struggling with the joy and anxiety of my third pregnancy, after 2 devastating losses, they were planning to abandon me. And my son, Noah, they called him an inconvenience. A problem. They meticulously plotted to leave me destitute, to steal everything we had, including my home, through a series of shell corporations and a forged second mortgage, which Mr. Davies here can attest to. I gestured subtly to the discreet photographer, who had stopped snapping photos and was now simply recording video, her expression one of grim professional satisfaction. This wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. A betrayal so profound, so calculated, it leaves no room for doubt or forgiveness. Hudson lunged from his seat, his chair scraping loudly, his face contorted in a desperate mix of fury and fear. "Gladys, you bitch! What have you done?" Owen was on his feet in an instant, pushing Hudson back with a powerful shove. "You bastard! How could you do this?" he roared, his voice shaking with rage. Angela stood, trembling, pointing a disgusted finger at Florence. "You snake! You pretended to be her friend." Chaos erupted. Eleanor wailed uncontrollably. Florence buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Hudson, cornered, began to babble incoherent denials, but his words were drowned out by the rising crescendo of shouts and accusations. Amidst the storm, I remained seated, a quiet, resolute island. My face was calm, my eyes cold, watching the carefully constructed world of Hudson and Florence shatter into irreparable fragments around them. The show, it seemed, had only just begun. Amidst the storm I remained seated, a quiet, resolute island. My face was calm, my eyes cold, watching the carefully constructed world of Hudson and Florence shatter into irreparable fragments around them. The show, it seemed, had only just begun. Eleanor's sobs were gut-wrenching, tearing at the polite silence that had fractured. Owen, his fists clenched, stood guard between me and his enraged brother, a silent apology in his fierce stance. Angela, typically composed, was openly pointing a trembling finger at Florence, her face a mask of revulsion. Hudson, caught between Owen's fury and the family's horrified stares, finally buckled. His desperate babbling dissolved into pathetic pleas. "Gladys, wait, it's not. It's a misunderstanding. Florence, tell her. Tell them." But Florence merely whimpered, her face still buried in her hands, her carefully constructed facade crumbling into a heap of shame and fear. I met Hudson's desperate gaze, my own eyes devoid of any emotion. "There is no misunderstanding, Hudson," I stated, my voice cutting through the hysteria, each word delivered with icy precision. "Every lie, every calculated deception, has been laid bare. There is only one path forward now." I stood, gathering my portfolio with deliberate slowness. "I am divorcing you, Hudson. Effective immediately, and I will be seeking full and sole custody of our son, Noah." A collective gasp went around the table. "Rest assured, legal proceedings have already begun. My attorney, Janet Morrison, is fully aware of every detail you have so meticulously provided." I glanced briefly at Mr. Davies, the photographer, who gave a slight, affirming nod, his camera still silently documenting the wreckage. This dinner was not a celebration, but an unveiling. And now, the curtain falls. With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind the cacophony of shattered lives, stepping into the cool autumn air with a sense of grim, unyielding purpose. The battle had been won. The war had just begun. The drive home was eerily silent, the chaos of Romanos replaced by the quiet hum of the engine and the deafening echo of my own thoughts. There was no joy, no triumphant rush, only a profound sense of exhaustion, a heavy emptiness that settled deep in my bones. I was free, yes, but the cost had been everything I had once held dear. Noah, my sweet Noah, was the only beacon in the desolate landscape of my heart. True to form, the onslaught began almost immediately. My phone, which I had put on silent, vibrated incessantly, a relentless barrage of calls and texts from Hudson and Florence. I didn't answer. I didn't even read them. I knew their content without looking. Desperate apologies, frantic pleas, then, inevitably, veiled threats. Asterisk, "Gladys, please, let's talk. Don't do this." Asterisk, followed by asterisk. "You'll regret this, Gladys. You'll get nothing." Asterisk. And from Florence. Asterisk. "How could you, Gladys? After everything we've been through. I thought we were friends." Asterisk. Each vibration was a faint, pathetic tremor against the granite wall I had built around myself. They were trying to claw their way back, to manipulate, to threaten, but the Gladys who could be swayed by their words had ceased to exist. The next morning, I was back in Janet Morrison's office. The weight of the previous night's confrontation still hanging in the air, but my resolve sharper than ever. I placed the Romanos receipt and the tiny elephant on her desk, along with a discreetly obtained copy of the video footage from the dinner. Janet watched the clip, a grim smile playing on her lips. "Excellent work, Mrs. Smith," she stated, her voice full of professional admiration. "This is beyond damning. The public display of their guilt, their confessions on tape, Hudson's outburst, and Florence's admission of her pregnancy. It's a goldmine." We spent hours meticulously reviewing the entire dossier. The recordings, the screenshots, the financial records, Mr. Davies' detailed reports, the forged mortgage documents. Each piece was a nail in Hudson's coffin. Janet systematically organized everything, outlining the legal strategy with the precision of a seasoned general. We filed the divorce papers that afternoon, along with a request for an immediate injunction on all marital assets, freezing Hudson's access to any shared funds and securing our home. The initial paperwork also included a demand for full custody of Noah, citing Hudson's moral turpitude, his active abandonment of his unborn child, and the financial schemes designed to leave me destitute. "Hudson will try to fight this," Janet warned, her gaze steady. "He'll hire the best, most aggressive lawyer money can buy. He'll try to discredit you, to paint you as an unstable, vindictive woman, but we have the truth. And we have irrefutable evidence. He won't stand a chance," and indeed, he did. Within days, a letter arrived from his legal team, headed by a prominent, ruthless attorney named Carter. Carter was known for his bare-knuckle tactics, his ability to twist narratives and exploit loopholes. His initial communication was dismissive, aggressive, attempting to portray my claims as baseless fabrications, threatening countersuits for defamation and emotional distress. He demanded the immediate release of all frozen assets and challenged the basis of the custody request. But Janet merely smiled as she read it. "Amateur hour," she murmured, tossing the letter onto her desk. "He hasn't seen what we have yet." The legal battle had officially begun. Carter, blinded by Hudson's lies and perhaps his own overconfidence, initially believed he was dealing with a typical messy divorce. He would soon learn, to his immense professional detriment, that he had walked into a meticulously planned ambush, a legal minefield orchestrated by a woman who had lost everything but her will to fight, and gained a formidable new weapon, the unwavering love for her unborn son. His initial bluster quickly faded, as Janet began to systematically unleash our collected evidence, piece by damning piece. During the discovery process, the strength of my case was not just probable, but undeniable. Leaving no room for his usual legal acrobatics, he would soon realize he was not just defending a cheating husband, but an exposed criminal, caught in a web of his own making. Carter's initial bluster, once a towering shield for Hudson, began to visibly crack under the relentless assault of truth. The sterile formality of the courtroom was a stark contrast to the emotional maelstrom that had consumed my life. Yet here, amidst the hushed reverence of legal process, my purpose felt sharper, colder, more potent than ever. Each day, as we entered the hushed chamber, I carried Noah's future like an unyielding banner, my gaze fixed not on Hudson's increasingly frantic face, but on the calm, stoic figure of the judge. When it was my turn to testify, I sat on the witness stand, bathed in the cool light of the courtroom, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil that still simmered deep within. Janet guided me with surgical precision, leading me through the labyrinth of betrayal. Each question a gentle probe, each answer a deliberate blow. I recounted the years of heartbreak, the 2 miscarriages, the joy of Noah's impending arrival, then the chilling discovery in the hospital corridor. I described the meticulous planning, the quiet installation of recording devices, the screenshots of damning texts, the financial documents detailing Hudson's scheme to leave me destitute, the Romanos receipt, the tiny wooden elephant, the video footage from that fateful dinner. Each piece of evidence was laid bare, a stark, undeniable testament to their perfidy. My delivery was factual, dispassionate, allowing the sheer weight of the evidence to speak for itself, rather than succumbing to the emotional theatrics Hudson and Florence often attempted. Hudson's lawyer, Carter, predictably, launched a full-scale assault on my character. He attempted to paint me as unstable, vindictive, a woman consumed by jealousy, fabricating an elaborate conspiracy in the throes of a hormonal pregnancy. He questioned my mental state, my credibility, my very sanity. "Mrs. Smith," he sneered during cross-examination, his voice dripping with condescension, "are you suggesting that your husband, a reputable businessman, and your best friend, a beloved member of your social circle, concocted such an elaborate scheme simply to hurt you?" "No, Mr. Carter," I replied, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. "I am suggesting they concocted it to enrich themselves, to hide their affair, and to abandon their responsibilities. Hurting me was merely a convenient byproduct of their greed and deceit." Each of his accusations, each attempt to twist my narrative, fell flat, crushed by the undeniable weight of the recorded conversations, the time-stamped photographs, and the meticulously documented financial transactions. The judge, a woman of unshakable composure, frequently interjected, reminding Carter to stick to the facts, not personal attacks. Then came Florence's testimony. She was a shadow of her former confident self, her vibrant emerald dress replaced by a drab conservative suit that did little to hide the subtle swell of her belly. Her eyes, once bright with cunning, now darted nervously, her answers evasive, her voice barely a whisper. She attempted to deny the affair, to minimize her involvement, to claim she was merely a victim of Hudson's manipulation, but her lies were exposed, one, by Janet's relentless cross-examination. Janet played snippets of the recordings where Florence actively participated in planning my ruin, presented the texts where she mocked me, and brought up the Romanos receipt that directly contradicted her claim of never having a romantic dinner with Hudson. The cruel irony of her own burgeoning belly, a silent testament to her treachery, became a public spectacle, solidifying her image as a deceitful, callous friend. Her public image, once carefully cultivated, crumbled into irreparable fragments. But the heart of the battle, the very reason I had endured this grueling process, remained Noah. During my testimony, and through Janet's powerful arguments, we hammered home Hudson's moral failings. How can a man who called his own unborn child an inconvenience, a problem to be navigated around, be deemed a fit parent? Janet asked the court, her voice echoing the outrage I held silent. I reiterated Hudson's own words, caught on tape, his casual disregard for the life he had helped create, his willingness to abandon Noah, to strip us of financial security, painted a damning picture of neglect and self-interest that no amount of Carter's bluster could obscure. We emphasized that his actions were not merely regrettable errors but a pattern of deep-seated moral turpitude that rendered him utterly unfit to be a primary caregiver. The discovery phase of the trial laid bare not just his infidelity, but a far more sinister pattern of financial malfeasance that extended beyond our divorce. The forged second mortgage, the shell corporations used to siphon marital assets, the hidden offshore accounts, these were not just marital disputes, they were criminal acts. Business partners, once loyal, were now watching the proceedings with growing alarm, their names inextricably linked to Hudson's unraveling reputation. The media, though restrained by court orders, buzzed with speculation, and whispers inevitably escaped, feeding the public's insatiable appetite for scandal. Hudson's career, once prestigious and seemingly impenetrable, was not just on the line, it was in free fall, plummeting towards an inevitable, catastrophic end. The walls he had built around his lies were collapsing, one meticulously placed piece of evidence at a time. The judge's final pronouncement echoed in the quiet courtroom, each word a stone meticulously placed on the scales of justice, tipping them decisively in my favor. It wasn't a sudden cathartic roar, but a quiet, implacable landslide, burying Hudson beneath the weight of his own transgressions. The legal charade was over. Full and sole custody of Noah was granted without hesitation, the court finding Hudson's blatant disregard for his unborn child and his egregious financial misconduct undeniable proof of his unfitness as a parent. The marital assets, meticulously traced and documented by Janet Morrison and Mr. Davies, were meticulously divided, ensuring a substantial portion for Noah's future and my own independence. Child support payments, coupled with significant alimony, were decreed not as a prize, but as the essential scaffolding for the new life I was building, free from his deceit. Every clause, every line of the settlement, was a testament to the ironclad case Janet had built, and to the unwavering truth that had been exposed. Hudson Smith, once a man who commanded respect and wielded financial power, now stood diminished and broken. His meticulously crafted empire crumbled around him. The allegations of financial fraud, once whispered behind closed doors, were now officially stamped and publicly revealed by the court. This led to the immediate dissolution of partnerships, the collapse of his business ventures, and a public inquiry into his past dealings. His professional licenses were revoked, his personal and business accounts frozen indefinitely, as further criminal investigations commenced for the forged mortgage and illicit offshore transfers. Socially, he became a pariah, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and dinner parties, his name synonymous with avarice and betrayal. The life he had so greedily sought to protect was now utterly decimated, leaving him with nothing but the ruins of his own making. Florence Miller, once my trusted friend, faced a different, yet equally devastating fall. Her reputation, shattered by the public exposure of her complicity and deceit, became synonymous with betrayal. The details of her affair with Hudson, her active participation in the scheme to defraud me, were widely reported, turning her into a figure of public scorn. Her job, a once coveted position in her company, was terminated, leaving her without income or prospects. The subtle swell of her belly, once a clandestine secret, became a public symbol of her scandal, attracting scorn and pity in equal measure. A constant visible reminder of her treachery, she was left to navigate her precarious future alone and financially destitute. The mirror image of the fate she and Hudson had planned for me, a cruel irony that settled deep within my soul. As I absorbed the finality of the judgment, a quiet satisfaction settled over me. It wasn't the fiery rush of vengeful triumph I had once envisioned in my darkest moments. It was something deeper, more profound. The cold, clean triumph of justice. I had not sought to merely hurt them. I had sought to dismantle their ability to hurt others, to reclaim what was rightfully mine, and most importantly, to secure Noah's future. There was no bitterness lingering, no gnawing anger, only the profound relief of a battle fought and won. The desolate void, once filled with the chill of betrayal, was now slowly being replaced by the quiet warmth of self-respect and renewed purpose. My life, once bound by their treachery, was now my own. I had not just survived. I had prevailed. I had walked through fire and emerged, not unscathed, but stronger, purer, ready to embrace the dawn of a new, peaceful chapter with my son. The quiet strength I found was not born of hatred, but of a fierce, unwavering love for the innocent life I carried. Months had passed since the gavel fell, since the echoes of their ruin faded from the courtroom, replaced now by a sound far more potent, far more beautiful. Noah's soft gurgle as he slept in my arms. He was utterly perfect, a tiny miracle bundle of warmth and innocence, his chest rising and falling in a gentle rhythm against mine. His hair, a wispy golden halo, smelled of sunshine and baby powder, and his small, plump hand often sought my finger, gripping it with surprising strength. In these quiet moments, cradling him by the window as the first light of dawn painted the sky, the cold resolve that had once defined me softened, melting into an overwhelming tide of tender, unconditional love. The joy he brought was a pure, dazzling light that purged the last vestiges of bitterness from my soul. All the years of aching emptiness, the two devastating losses, the gut-wrenching betrayal, they now seemed like distant, necessary shadows, defining the brilliance of this present moment. Noah wasn't just my son. He was my rebirth, my second chance at a life filled with genuine, unadulterated happiness. I would watch him sleep, trace the curve of his cheek, and a fierce protectiveness would surge through me, but it was no longer fueled by anger or revenge. It was a calm, steady current of maternal devotion, an unbreakable promise to nurture and shield this precious life. The anger, once a raging inferno, had finally cooled, leaving behind a quiet understanding. I realized I had not become vengeful out of malice, but out of a primal need to protect, and in that protection, I had found a strength I never knew I possessed. There was a subtle forgiveness, too. Not for Hudson or Florence, but for myself, for the woman I had been, naive and trusting, and for the woman I had become, cold and calculating. Both were parts of my journey. Both had led me to Noah. The past was a closed book, its pages dog-eared and stained, but the story it told had forged the resilient person I was today. My focus now was entirely forward, on the boundless possibilities that stretched before us. Navigating single motherhood was a new adventure, one I embraced with an invigorating sense of independence. The financial security Janet Morrison had fought so fiercely for meant I could dedicate myself entirely to Noah, without the crushing weight of worry. I learned to change diapers with practiced ease, to soothe his cries with lullabies whispered in the quiet hours, and to celebrate every tiny milestone. His first smile, his grasping fingers, the way his eyes would track me across the room. My home, once a battlefield, was now a sanctuary, filled with baby toys, soft blankets, and the scent of formula. It was a space I had reclaimed, redesigned to foster life and love. Each day, I discovered new facets of my own capabilities, my own resilience. I was no longer defined by the betrayal I had suffered, but by the boundless love I now gave and received. This new life, far removed from the darkness of deceit, bloomed with a profound and unexpected purpose. It was a life built not on fragile trust, but on unwavering self-reliance and the unbreakable bond with my son. I was Gladys, a survivor, a mother, and a woman who had dared to fight for her future and won. The quiet strength I once found in strategy now manifested in the tender care of my child, in the laughter that bubbled freely from my lips, and in the hopeful vision of the years stretching ahead. Noah was my anchor, my joy, my ultimate triumph. He was the most beautiful chapter of my story, and I was ready to write every single page. Looking back, the path I traversed was less a journey and more a brutal pilgrimage. Each step, from the moment of devastating discovery to the quiet finality of the courtroom, was forged in the crucible of betrayal and grief. Yet, within that crucible, something new was born. A strength I never knew I possessed. A fierce, unwavering determination that transformed a heartbroken wife into a formidable protector. The pain was real, raw, and at times almost unbearable. But it was that very pain, coupled with the profound love I felt for the innocent life growing within me, that ignited the fire of my resolve. My transformation wasn't a choice. It was a necessity, driven by the most primal instinct of all, a mother's love. That love, for my Noah, was the true north of my compass, guiding every calculated move, every sleepless night spent planning. It wasn't revenge that truly motivated me, though satisfaction certainly came with justice. It was the simple, pure, and utterly unbreakable bond with my child that propelled me forward. He was the reason I fought, the reason I meticulously gathered every shred of evidence, the reason I stood unyielding in the face of their lies. His future, his well-being, his right to a life unmarred by their deceit, was worth every single battle scar I collected along the way. A mother's love, I learned, is the most powerful force on earth, capable of shattering mountains and rebuilding entire worlds. It is the purest form of resilience. Reflecting on my journey, one truth resonated above all others. The quiet whispers of intuition are not to be underestimated. That gut feeling, often dismissed when those you trust most attempt to gaslight you, is a compass. When the world conspires to break you, when deceit threatens to consume everything, it is then you must remember your worth, your strength, and what truly matters. To fight, with every fiber of your being, with strategy and precision, and with an unwavering belief in your right to justice and peace. I learned that resilience isn't just about enduring. It's about claiming the immense power within, especially when defending what is truly yours, when protecting those you love. My future, once shrouded in the darkness of their treachery, is now a blank canvas, painted with the vibrant hues of hope and possibility. I am not defined by what they did to me, but by what I became in spite of it. Peace, I discovered, wasn't an endpoint without conflict, but a garden cultivated in the aftermath of a storm, tended with self-respect and the boundless joy of motherhood. It is a future built on my own terms, with Noah by my side, secure and cherished. We are writing our own story now, one filled with laughter, love, and the quiet triumph of a life reclaimed. Every sunset now carries the promise of a peaceful tomorrow. Every sunrise, the gentle joy of Noah's awakening. This quiet triumph, born from the deepest pain, was all the revenge I ever truly needed.